we can't say anything about true oneness because true oneness is beyond anything that we could know about, think about, see, observe, comment on, do anything about. It's completely beyond that. You'll never say anything about it in truth. It's impossible. But what we can do is we can observe the structure of the rest of it. So there's a relationship between these aspects, the aspect of the observer and the observed. And through that, all of creation blossoms. So it's all taking place through this dynamic between the observer and the observed. And the fundamental power involved in this is attention. Attention is what actually causes something specific to express. So before attention is directed, then you have undifferentiated potential. And through the power of attention, that becomes directed and it becomes something specific. So it's undifferentiated, non-specific, pure potential. And then through the power of attention, it becomes something specific. And so this is why it's when people want to solve all their problems just by sitting in meditation, meditation is too vague of a term. If people want to solve all of their problems by just trying to rest as the self, it's a slow and difficult process because it's failing to recognize that there's a dynamic that's occurring that where there's a process by which the undifferentiated pure potential becomes something specific, becomes something manifest. And that's directed through attention. So when you actually start to utilize your attention consciously, you have the ability to start to consciously participate in this process, in this loop that's the process of creation. Now, again, it's possible and people are free to view this however they want. So if you wanted to choose to just denigrate creation and say creation is just a big mistake, it's just illusory, and it's all pain and suffering, and I'm just going to try and check out, you're free to do that, but then probably there's nothing here for you in this meeting because that's not what I'm talking about. Because I found that doesn't work very well for most people. Certainly didn't work very well for me. It can take a person only so far. It's useful to recognize that just trying to accomplish things in material reality in and of itself is not going to give complete fulfillment. That's useful. It's useful to realize that I am not dependent upon anything that happens here. So my fundamental existence does not depend upon any of the things happening in this world. That's useful to recognize because that gives you a very important perspective. So you're no longer caught up, at least not so caught up, in all of this false sense of urgency, like I have to fix all these problems. My existence depends upon these things. That's very useful, but that's about as far as that can take most people, because for most people, they still have all these unresolved desires and attachments, and just trying to rest as the self, as I've said, is too slow of a process, and most people can't pull it off. Certainly not if you're still trying to be engaged in the world. That's why I make this distinction between being the renunciate path and the path of attainment or accomplishment. And it's useful to know who you are, because if you're a renunciate, then you should probably renounce the world clearly and definitively and stop trying to make money and stop trying to feed your family and just go to a monastery or a cave, because that would be the correct way to try and walk your path if you're truly a renunciate. But if you're not a renunciate, then trying to do that is not actually going to help you. It will actually impede your growth. So that's why I'm advocating for, if you can recognize that you are not a renunciate, and then good, there's a path for you, and that path involves, in many ways, it's faster because then you can engage consciously in the process of creation, and you can fulfill your desires. So we'll resolve things much clearer and faster. But then you need to understand how creation is structured, what the process is. So, so there's as I said, there's a relationship happening between the dual aspects, and that relationship is governed by or mediated by attention. So attention is super important, and most people overlook this. So most people are trying just to rely on techniques. They've watched a bunch of YouTube videos and they're like, okay, I got the techniques. I'll use the techniques. And they get some results with the techniques. Maybe they don't. But at some point it stalls, because if you're just depending on techniques, you don't have a, a deep enough understanding of the mechanisms. So you don't know how to troubleshoot. You're just stuck with techniques. Techniques are not a low enough level in order to give you real mastery. If you want real mastery, you have to actually understand at the fundamental level how things are working. So that's why I emphasize the importance of attention, because attention is that fundamental relationship between the dual aspects of reality. Okay. And it's your fundamental power. It's how you create. So the basic law, and again, I'm not telling you that you have to believe me. I'm just giving you the information. Then I invite you to check it out in your own experience. Just see if it's true or not. That law is that whatever you put your attention on, that's where your energy goes. So you get more of that. And the big mistake that people make, even when they have this fundamental understanding, this very basic understanding, is they still keep putting their attention on what they don't want. I've said this so many times, and I will keep saying it because it's probably the biggest, most important thing that where people make the mistake, myself included. It's so easy to make that mistake, but it's also tremendously painful and really slows down things. So if you took nothing else away from this talk today, hear this. Putting your attention, whatever you put your attention on, that's what you get more of. And if you put your attention on what you don't want, you will get more of what you don't want. How is it that people put their attention on what they don't want? Well, probably an enormous variety of ways, but one of the most fundamental ways that people do that is they just keep telling themselves what they don't want. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. The mistake is thinking that just saying what you don't want somehow is going to give you what you do want. It won't. Saying what you don't want is like, think about this. So it's basically an infinite reality, infinite diversity. And you take away one thing. You say, I don't want this. Okay. So mathematically, what is infinity minus one? It's still infinity. Infinity minus one is still infinity. So you've done basically nothing by just simply saying, I don't want this one thing. You have not helped yourself at all to get clarity about what you do want. And worse than that, you're still putting your attention on what you don't want. So you've not made any progress toward what you do want, and you're still putting your attention on what you don't want. That's the big mistake. If you just say, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, all you're doing is reinforcing what you don't want and getting absolutely no clarity whatsoever in what you do want. And yet that's where most people stay stuck. And then sometimes people will hear this and then they'll say, okay, now I get it. And then they start dressing it up. They say, oh, I get it. It's not that I don't want the debt. It's that I want to pay off the debt. Well, same basic mistake, right? So if you want to pay off the debt, it seems like it's better than I don't want the debt, except that it's not. You're still just focused on the debt. I don't want the debt, now dressed up as I want to pay off the debt. You're still focused on the debt. You have no actual clarity about what you want. You're still just focused on the debt. It seems like progress, but it's not. Because you actually have to get clarity about what you want if you want things to change. So instead of what you don't want, you have to think about what you actually do want. So I've suggested this question a number of times. I'll suggest it again today because it's really powerful. Ask yourself, what do I want instead? And imagine, so even with that, you can still get yourself into trouble because you could say, well, what do I want instead of the debt? I want to pay off the debt. I want to be debt free. You know, what do I want instead of this person abusing me? Well, I want them to stop abusing me. Seems like it's a step in the right direction. It's not though. It's just dressed up the same thing. You know, you've put the there's some expression for this that I can't think of, but it's not useful. So let me put some conditions on this. So imagine for a moment, let's call this a thought experiment, that what you don't want does not exist. So just imagine that it does not exist. And then ask yourself, what do you want instead of the thing that's not there? Okay, so there was something there that you were saying that you didn't want. I don't want the debt. I don't want the pain. I don't want the this. I don't want the that. And then let's just imagine that's not there. Imagine the pain's not there, the debt's not there, the abuse is not there, the whatever that is. Imagine that's not there. Now, that you can no longer reference that thing. What do you want instead? You'll probably draw a blank for a little while. What do you mean? Because all you've known is the thing you don't want. But let's just take that away. So you're forcing yourself to actually get clarity about what you do want.